Welcome back. We're here in this segment with two members of our celiac and gluten sensitive interest group here at Green Spring. On my left here, I have Zoe Parker, who is a member of that group, and beside her is Martha. Is it Reza or Reza?
Either way is fine.
Either way is fine, okay. She's the leader of the celiac and gluten sensitive group. We have a lot of information to give you, and please excuse us for kind of reading from a script, but we do want to make sure that we give you solid information here on this subject in the short period that we have. Our goal here this morning is to inform residents and staff of Green Spring of the challenges that some of our residents face when it comes to gluten in their diets. These residents have been diagnosed with celiac disease or with a gluten sensitivity relative to their particular body. First, let's ask the question, what is gluten? Martha, can you answer that question for us?
Yes, gluten is a protein that is found in wheat, barley, and rye. And this is the protein that people with celiac disease and gluten sensitivity have problems with. It's found in a lot of things, a lot of foods, because they use wheat to thicken sauces and salad dressings.
And these people are also sensitive to rye and barley and some strains of oats, correct?
Yes, yes.
Okay. And Zoe is going to answer the question for us, what is celiac disease?
Celiac disease is a genetic autoimmune disorder that's caused by an immune response to gluten. And this gradually destroys the villi of the small intestine, and this is the duodenum, so that nutrients are not absorbed properly. Because they're not absorbed properly, this leads to many different symptoms and medical conditions. And some symptoms such as diarrhea, bloating, gas, abdominal pain, fatigue show up right away. Others such as weakness, anemia, bone loss, tingling in the arms or legs, these may take longer. One of our members found a type of rash on the arm that was a symptom of disease. In children, the main problem is failure to thrive.
And while Zoe was talking, those of you who are watching saw a graphic on your screen that showed the intestine and what happens to the intestine, and you're seeing it again. What happens to the intestine of a person who does have celiac disease. So tell us how the diagnosis is made. The diagnosis is not something that one should ever attempt to self-diagnose. Can you tell us how it is diagnosed?
Right. Well, as Susan said, you should start with your doctor if you have symptoms, and who may eventually refer you to a gastroenterologist. The doctor will take a careful history of your problems and have to rule out other causes of gastrointestinal distress, such as infections and so on. Then there will be a blood test. 2 types of antibodies are tested for, and both need to be tested. A biopsy of the small intestine will then determine what damage may have been done. So these are 3 very important steps for celiac disease in order to diagnose it.
There is a second type of sensitivity to wheat, and that is a wheat allergy. Some people do have a wheat allergy, which is very similar to any other kind of an allergy to peanuts, an allergy to bee stings. And that is tested just like any other kind of allergy through a scratch test. Now, a wheat allergy can be life-threatening, as can any other kind of allergy, but we're talking about people who are sensitive to grains, and this is a second type of allergic reaction, and these people also are people who need to watch for wheat specifically in their diet. And the third kind of sensitivity we want to talk about relative to gluten is gluten sensitivity, and Martha is going to answer exactly what gluten sensitivity is.
Gluten sensitivity is not diagnosed through a blood test. That's how it's different from celiac disease. The only way is to eliminate gluten from your diet. and consult your doctor. If you feel better, it's probably the gluten. The other difference that where gluten sensitivity is from celiac disease is that people with gluten sensitivity lack the enzymes to process or digest the gluten. So the symptoms are very similar.
So well, I think we want to go back to, because we see all over the television and magazines, gluten-free, gluten sensitivity, et cetera, et cetera. And I know that you are both well-schooled in this, and we want to make it very clear that this is not something that you want to say, oh, well, you know, I feel bloated, I don't feel good, maybe I'll just stop eating gluten. And both of you have said to me multiple times that it's so important to not try to self-diagnose. Go to your doctor first. Be tested, find out, because if you try to make those changes on your own, then your doctor is not going to be able to test properly and to treat you properly. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes, if you stop eating wheat or other items with gluten in it before you see the doctor, then the blood test won't show celiac disease. So it was difficult to get a confirmation.
So you can make it more difficult for yourself by trying to play around with this on your own.
At first.
Okay, so let's talk about where gluten is found. Martha, talk to us. Where do I find gluten?
Well, in addition to wheat, rye, and barley, you'll find it in, as I mentioned, salad dressings, gravy, stews, soup, soy sauce, because sometimes wheat is added to the soy sauce, and ice cream. They use it in ice cream to thicken it, or they use ingredients that are derivative of gluten to give it some kind of special quality.
So I would say, am I correct in saying they may use it? They don't always
Exactly.
use it. Yeah.
You really have to read the labels and find out what's in the product. A lot of products these days actually have the words gluten-free or GF. And to be really sure, you have to look for that to make sure there's no gluten in the product.
And I think that's the hardest part, because when you look at a label, the label isn't necessarily going to say gluten. There could be lots of other words and lots of other terms. And I really encourage anyone who is concerned about this, or maybe in the midst of being treated, and I think doctors are notorious for not having a lot of nutrition-related education. And a doctor may say to you, avoid gluten, but you may have to go out on your own and become educated about what does that mean. And there are lots of good resources online to help you understand what words to look for. You also may want to talk with a registered dietitian. You may want to talk with someone else who is an expert. Avoid someone who slaps the term nutritionist on a door. That person really doesn't have that kind of training, but a registered dietitian is going to be able to advise you about what are the correct terms to look for when you're reading labels. That really is a key when you're shopping outside in the world, to look at labels to know what you're reading. So let's go back here, because we are talking to people at Green Spring, and let's talk about eating at Green Spring, and how at Green Spring we can talk about where gluten is maybe found in our diets here, and how to stay away from gluten here. And Zoe's going to talk to us about that.
Well, there are 5 sources of information, and some are labeled gluten-free, some gluten-friendly, and wheat-free. And wheat-free is the latest one. The table menus in restaurants will show some with a G or a symbol of a wheat shaft. That was Eli's contribution.
That's in the restaurants that have table menus.
Yes, the restaurants that have table menus. Then the weekly menus, which everybody gets, will show many entrees with these symbols, along with a D for dairy-free and a V for vegetarian. But these sources do not show whether soups, salads, vegetables, starches, or ice creams are wheat-free. So that creates a little bit of a difficulty in knowing. So the daily menu in some restaurants will show the chef's special salads and soups, whether it's wheat-free or not. And so this is really important for them to do that. The other source is Net Nutrition or My Nutrition at Erickson.com. It has menus showing foods that are okay for several different allergies, and the ingredients of all the foods can be found. If you put the mouse pointer over on the food, then it'll show whether it has wheat in it or not. The final source is, if in doubt, ask the wait staff or the manager to ask the kitchen chef if items contain gluten, because the chefs are the only ones that really know, especially with any entree with a sauce on it. Most of us just say no sauce, and then we don't have to worry about it.
Michael Ritt, our executive chef, has recently advised us that he has completed, and they will soon be available, notebooks that will be available for the Fireside Dining Room and the Woodland Skies Dining Room, that will be available in the dining rooms, that show every recipe for every dish, that will be available, that you can go in and look and review those recipes and see exactly what is in them. So those will also be available to you for those two dining rooms. Martha, talk to us about the Celiac and Gluten Sensitive group. When does that group meet, and who can join?
We meet every third Thursday of the month at 2:30 in the craft room of Town Center. And really, anybody can attend who wants to learn more about it. But we do encourage people who have celiac disease or gluten sensitivity to attend. We exchange a lot of ideas. We learn a lot. And even scientists are still learning a lot about this.
So I won't say it's a new disease, it's just something that has recently gotten attention that it deserves, perhaps?
Yes. In the past, it's been misdiagnosed, or doctors didn't know enough about it.
So that's good. I'm glad we have a place where the information can be shared. As far as online information, I would encourage people to search for information online. One of the most clear, with my having no knowledge of it whatsoever, one of the sources of the most clear information for the person who is a non-medical type to understand, I found that celiac.org, which is the site of the Celiac Disease Foundation, was a very good website for finding a lot of good, clear information, especially about how to read the labels of packaged food was a good one. And as always, and we repeat again, your best source of information is to start out with your primary care physician. We just have about 30 seconds left. Anything else that you ladies would like to add?
Well, there was another Celiac Disease Foundation that Martha used, and
that's the same one, celiac.org.
Okay,
Yeah.
That's the same thing. And I got on PubMed for the Library of Medicine, but that almost gives you too much information.
A little more technical. Well, ladies, thank you for joining us today. And I have a couple of other housekeeping announcements to make here. Future programming.